I'm Debbie Godfrey, and this is the Positive Parenting Pep Talks podcast. In season 2, I'm answering your questions about parenting. So feel free to go to the link in the description and leave me a voice message, and I may answer your question on this podcast. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy today's pep talk.
Hello, hi Debbie. So I asked these questions in the email. I will try to explain to everybody so it's clear. Actually, the two questions are related to each other. So the first thing is that my son, he's also a 4-year-old boy. He gets quite anxious for new situations, such as going to school or going for a swimming class. And actually, how I handle that is quite often giving him some presents, so actually bribing him into doing that. Which actually seem to work to some degree. But the problem is now that anytime he feels a little bit anxious, he demands a present. And it's very hard for me to say anything, because if I say no, we get into a power struggle. And he doesn't quite know what. I don't really know how to handle it. So sometimes I try to get the relationship repaired. So when I told him, for example, I wish I could give you presents every day, I can see that it kind of works a little bit, but then he goes back again that I haven't got my present yet. Can I get my present now? Can you give me a surprise? And he feels entitled to it because he said, I was a good boy, mommy. Can I get the present? So I'm not quite sure what to do in this situation, even though I'm sidestepping it as much as I can right now, but it still exists. So I'm not sure what to do with this.
Yeah, and that's the problem with rewards, that I always say they come back and bite us in the bottom, because they do create this what's in it for me attitude with the kids, so that it motivates them in the beginning when it's fun and excited, but then exactly as you're describing, then they feel they become entitled. It's a tool that we, in this class we suggest don't use a reward system, because it will undermine your effectiveness as a parent. The exception to this is any of you that have kids that have been diagnosed with ADD or some kind of attention thing. Some of those kids actually need the external motivation of a reward system as coaching, as help, and they will thrive in it. And you'll know the difference, because those kids tend to take the coaching, the rewarding, and it tends to help their behavior improve. When you've got a, quote, normal kid that doesn't have one of those diagnoses, when you use the reward system, it creates worse behavior rather than better behavior. I just want to make sure that you understand there is an appropriate time for a reward system, but it's when a child doesn't have the capability of self-managing or self-motivating, then the reward system will fill in that gap. But for most kids that have that ability, the reward system is going to be a way to manipulate. And so you're seeing the results of that. So the first way out of that is to train yourself to get out of the reward paradigm. And the reward paradigm is this: if you do this, you'll get that mentality. And it's not easy to do. One of the things that I used to do when I was trying to train myself out of this, because this is how everybody works. We have this whole, if you do this, you'll get that mentality. One of the things that I used to do is say stuff to my kids like, okay, we're going to go get ice cream, and you guys don't have to do anything. Because what I found I was doing when I started learning about this stuff, I would say something like, hey, let's go get some ice cream, you guys, and as we're getting ready to go out the door, I'll be like, well, go clean your rooms first, or first you have to do this, or, I would throw in something like some way to manipulate them into doing something to get their ice cream. And that was that part of that destructive paradigm of, if you do this, you'll get that. So in order to train myself out of that, I would throw out these random, if you, I go, we'll just go get something just for the joy of getting it. So if you want to give him gifts, Julia, I think that's great, but don't attach them to behaviors. So don't attach them to him going to swimming. Don't attach them to him behaving appropriately. Just like you're getting a present just because you are, and I love buying you presents. And do it randomly and intermittently. And the research has shown that random and intermittent quote, rewarding. I don't like to call that rewarding, but goodies given randomly and intermittently are actually effective, because then they don't have any way to predict. Like right now, he wants one every time because that was the pattern that he got established, and that doesn't work. That gets that entitlement going. So,
and then how do I get him to go to school or go to swimming class?
Well, that's all. That you want to separate the issues. So first you want to just think, okay, no more rewarding for behavior that he has to do regardless. Like, you don't get rewarded for stuff that you just have to do in life. And so it's about self-motivating. So if we're talking about school, it's like everybody has to go to school, and you don't get a reward for that. It's just part of life. And so how are you going to get him to go to school? I mean, every day that you deal with something with him, we're going to have to look at what happened today. And in that situation, how can you redirect it or encourage him? So we'd have to look every day, what is he doing? Is he lagging getting dressed? Well, let's use some, encouragement ideas, or preventing power struggles, like lay out his clothes the night before. Is he whining and complaining and saying he doesn't want to go? That'll be the goal of avoidance. We'll cover tools for encouraging them when they're in the goal of avoidance in, 4 weeks from now. So you'll just have to deal with each situation when he's resistant to going to school on its own merit, and come up with ideas just using tools that we've had in the class and that we will have in the class, and start encouraging him and, trying to motivate him. And if nothing else, just keep doing gems with him. And when you get in that moment of starting to have the fight, to just stop and say, I'm not willing to fight with you right now, and I'm not willing to give in, and I'm not sure exactly what to do. So I just want to take a moment here, acknowledge you. I love your determination. I love your spirit. And the two of us are going to have to figure out a different way for you to do what you're supposed to do without you pitching a fit or whatever it is that he's doing. And so, I'm not being very specific because I need a specific example so that I can give you one. So
for example, I need to take him to swimming class, because I think that's like once per week, so it's not very often. I need to take him to swimming class, and have to get him to the car, and he's not coming. He's screaming. He's saying that he's not doing the swimming class. So we are time bound. We have to be there on time. I already paid for the lesson. What can I do? Instead of telling him you get a sweet when we get there.
Okay, so does he want to be in the swimming lessons, or did you make him do it?
He wants to be in the swimming lessons, but he is just scared of it. So he says he's scared of getting into the water. Once he's there, he loves it. So that's why I feel with him it's very difficult, because he loves his school as well. He just feels anxious when he has to start some new activity.
So
and
maybe he's a little bit.
He loves it.
Yeah. So maybe he's a little bit of a slow to transition child.
Exactly.
Okay. So with slow to transition kids, giving them the transition time can help. So maybe letting them know, it's a half an hour before we leave for swimming. It's 15 minutes before we leave for swimming. Is there anything you need from me before we go? And give him some transition time to get ready to go. And I like what you shared before when you recognized he was fearful. Remember the story that you shared? I don't remember it specifically right now, but I remember you did something and it really helped him with his fear. And, doing more of that and just trying. See, the problem is if we make kids do stuff, then when they get resistant, it's hard to redirect it. Has he ever missed a swimming class because of his behavior?
Yeah.
And what happens then?
We are in a situation where there is another child who goes, and then we just paid our part, and he goes on his own. So he kind of just misses it.
Okay, how many more classes have you paid for?
Actually, now it's pay as you go, because since I missed that class, I told the instructor that I might not come back again. So I said we pay how we go, but then the other child has to pay more when he goes on his own. because we are just paying when we go. So it's a bit inconvenient for me because the other parent has to pay more because he is not going. So that's why it's an uncomfortable situation, but it's not that bad. He can get away with it, to be honest. The problem is he's not going to learn how to swim. They are going to go for swimming classes later on, like a year later. He's going to go to classes with his school class, and he will be the one who won't be able to swim. So he will feel really bad after that. So he doesn't really have to take the lessons right now, but he will be a bit behind, and I think that will be worse.
Right.
Or when we go on holiday.
So I just had another idea. There was a worksheet I hope I gave you guys. I'm trying to remember. I'll have to go look and see if I did. It was called Reducing Stress, and I usually give it to everybody the first week or two of class. I will look and see if I posted that. If I didn't, I'll post it today and put a link to it in the email later for this. The Reducing Stress worksheet is a way to come up with ideas to lessen stressful situations and change the dynamic of what's happening. And so, like, for example, when my kids were little, when my husband would get home from work, it was just this terribly stressful time of day because he'd get home, he'd want to change his clothes, take a shower, relax for a minute. I'd been with the kids all day. I just wanted to dump the kids off on him. The kids haven't seen him all day. They wanted him. And it was just this really stressful time of day that should have been more fun. And so I did this worksheet, which helps us brainstorm and come up with other ideas for getting a different result in those stressful situations. And I came up with the idea of, my husband would get home every day at 4 o'clock. So at 3:45, I'd put the kids in the stroller, and I would go to the park. And I took them to the park to play for 45 minutes. So Dave had a half an hour when he got home to a quiet, empty house. He could take a shower, change his clothes, transition himself into family time. So when I came in the door at 4:30 with the kids, he was ready for us, and he had that time. So what I'm thinking is you could do that worksheet for this stressful time of day for you, which is getting to swimming class, and see if you can brainstorm some completely different way to handle the routine. So maybe right now, like let's say you're leaving from the house to go to swimming lessons, maybe you set it up so that you're somewhere else when you're at that time of day, so that when you go to swimming class, it's not such a big deal, and that you can avoid the whole fearful this and that. But there's some way, and you can using the worksheet will help you brainstorm this to prevent that stressful situation and that time of day from happening.
Yeah, so, actually I was thinking of that's what I'm going to do, that we will have dinner there, and next time I will take him directly there after he finished nursery, so I don't have to get him into the car again.
So follow that intuitive idea that you had, because that may be the way, because I totally hear what you're saying. He loves it once he's there. He needs this for his future, and so maybe it's not the right situation to let him quit, because he really needs it. And so just figuring out how to avoid the stressful part of it, which is him fretting about and being in fear about going. So distracting him somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Let me.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's Positive Parenting Pep Talks podcast. If you're into season 2 and you're listening to all these great questions that the parents have and answers and ideas for what to do in all these different situations with your kids, please help us out. Like, share, subscribe, and especially leave us a positive review. All of that helps the podcast grow, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again for being here, and happy parenting.